However, a lot of you may ask, what parts do you need? How much money do you need to spend? And how many organs do you need to sell to afford that? Well, I'm the bearer of bad news and I'm here to let you know. Welcome back to a new video, everyone. If you haven't been on this channel yet, my name is Nathan and this is my 2001 Nissan 200SX S15. And like the intro of the video suggests, I'm going to be going through all of the parts and all of the money I've spent on this piece of crap here to make it hold 400 kilowatts plus. So you have a blank canvas, you have an S15 or another S chassis with an SR20. What are the first things you have to do to an SR20 to make 400 kilowatts? The SR20 DET is a pretty stout engine as it is. However, every engine has its limits when it comes to this particular engine. You want to start gritting your teeth around 280, 290 kilowatts. There have been some freak SR20s that are made over 300 kilowatts. I've seen some make 320, 330 kilowatts, but they don't last very long, as you can probably imagine. My particular SR20 has been forged and makes around about 285 kilowatts. Now, the reason why the power is so low is because it's limited by my ancient turbo and small injectors because I'm running E85. However, almost every single person that has ridden in my car say that it's the quickest 285 kilowatts they've experienced. Look, I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but I have to say the same. Now, the reason why it feels so quick and peppy is because it's got a built motor like I mentioned before. Now, as you can imagine, there are heaps and heaps of benefits of having a built motor. One of which is being able to ramp in the power as hard as possible so you get a maximum amount of torque down low, which gives it that really peppy and like torquey feel. In here, I have a library of all the things that I've done to this engine. Well, not me personally, I had a shop build it. I'm by no means qualified to build an engine, but let's get into it. Before I start, guys, I do have to disclose that I got this engine at an incredibly good deal, and I'll explain why. So initially, I was gonna do a very mild build on this car. I was gonna do head studs, valve springs, cams, E85, injectors, and so on. And it was, like I said in an earlier clip, it was gonna make around about 280 kilowatts. Unfortunately, the shop that built my motor accidentally blew it up. I'm not gonna mention the name of the shop because they did an amazing build on this engine and they rectified and made everything good with me after they made that mistake. I have to say, I'm personally a mechanic and I work for a shop, so I know mistakes happen all the time. So I don't blame these guys for screwing up my engine. So without further ado, I'm gonna just blurt out the number that I spent on this engine. $10,300. So a couple of thousand of that was labor for the initial head work that I had done. This shop, like I said, went above and beyond. They covered all the labor, all the tuning and whatnot for when I decided to forge my motor. What they basically said is, since we're pulling your motor apart to inspect what's happened, we can reuse the stock pistons and rods that came in it, or you can chip in a little bit of money and go forged. So what do you guys think I'll do? So starting from the top, the first things you'll need are some cams and valve springs. SR20s are notorious for having pretty inefficient cams. You won't really make anywhere past like sort of 230, 240 kilowatts on stock cams. So I've gone with some Kelford 264 cams and some Kelford valve springs. So they set me back $355 for valve springs and $700 for the actual cams. So right there, you've got $1,000. If you want to make any sort of power on an SR20, even like sort of go past 200, 210 kilowatts, you need injectors, whether you're going 98, E85. So I've opted for 1000cc injectors, and I believe it's a BPP billet top feed fuel rail, and all of that set me back $750. Now, continuing on with the fuel, you'll need a fuel pressure regulator and an upgraded fuel pump. So for those, I paid $600 for the Walbro and for the wiring to go from the battery to then a relay in the boot to then the 525 fuel pump. And I paid $240 for the TurboSmart fuel pressure regulator, which is just located here. Now these are just the bulk parts that I'm listing for you guys. There are going to be a few little fittings, wiring things, like just miscellaneous stuff that I'm just not going to mention in the video, but I will include a total of all the miscellaneous stuff as well. So going a little bit lower in the engine, we're going to be talking about head studs and head gasket. So I opted for a Nitto head gasket and ARP head studs. So the MLS head gasket cost me $350 and ARP cost me $380. So that list was the original list for all the work I was going to get done for this SR. However, like I mentioned earlier in the video, the engine did let go and I ended up getting forged internals for the bottom end. So once again, I went for all Nitto products because I heard amazing things about them. A lot of the fastest Nissans you'll see in Australia and around the world use Nitto products. I wanted to make sure that I got the best of the best for this car. So I didn't cheap out on that and I went for Nitto pistons, which were $1,240. I also went for Nitto I-beam rods, which were $1,080. Now for some reason, there's a massive debate about what's better, whether it's H-beam or I-beam rods. I've heard a lot of mixed things. I know that I-beams are technically meant to be stronger, hence why they're slightly more expensive than H-beams. However, H-beam rods have been known to make just as much power as I-beams. So it's really up to you guys what you want to use. You're not going to be stressing out H-beams or I-beams making 400 kilowatts plus. I just went for I-beams because I was an idiot and I didn't know any better. But looking back on it, I should have gone H-beams because I'm not going to be pushing this thing much past 400 kilowatts. So the cheapest parts in the bottom end were actually the race ACL main bearings and big end bearings. So the main bearings were $125, cheap as chips, and the big end bearings were 85 bucks, even better. Think of it like the sides and the condiments to a built motor. So another thing that's optional is I went for high octane billet oil pump gears because I want to make sure that this thing never runs out of oil pressure and maintains perfect oil pressure. So I haven't actually heard any people running billet oil pump gears in SR20s. I don't know whether they're really needed. I know that when people do build these motors, they use either Nitto oil pumps, they use factory Nissan oil pumps, or they use the VE oil pumps. Once again, it's up to you. I haven't had any problems. I absolutely abused this thing. I bounced off the limiter. There is not a single day I drive it where it doesn't see red line or limiter at least once. And I don't know, it seems to be alright for now. Now what I'm about to say is one of the most controversial topics in the SR20 community, and that's rocker arm stoppers. So a lot of people swear by them, a lot of people absolutely hate them and tell you to get rid of them and throw them into the biggest garbage bin you've ever seen. However, this particular shop that built my motor has a fix for rocker arms popping off SR20s. So I'm not exactly sure what they did. However, they modify the rocker arm stopper so that there's enough clearance for the rocker arm to go up and down, but when it tries to bounce, there's a slight tolerance in there where if it does try and bounce off, it sort of hits it and falls back down. Obviously, there are some drawbacks. You've got weak rocker arms. They may hit it and snap. However, it's just the game you play when you own an SR20. So it's a lose-lose sort of situation. However, if you can manage to stay away from limiter, that's how you keep these SR20s alive. SR20 things. When you're talking about S chassis, they're not particularly strong in the engine or drivetrain department. So you're gonna have to upgrade the transmission when it eventually breaks. Now, S15s come with a 6-speed Aisin transmission, which people compare it to dried up dog shit. In my particular case, I have no idea how, but it's somehow holding up to 300 kilowatts and a whole bunch of abuse. But in the off chance it does decide to grenade, I have a backup. Now, a very, very common swap for SR20 powered vehicles is a Skyline or VQ CD009 transmission. In this particular case, I've opted for an R34 Skyline transmission, which I bought brand new from Nissan for $3,200. Now, unfortunately with R34 style transmissions, you're very limited in clutches because they have a different mechanism for the clutch fork and slave cylinder. So what I've done is I've purchased an R33 fork, front cover and slave cylinder, and I'm going to modify the bell housing and drill out the provisions that the standard bell housing comes with and mount the R33 slave cylinder and fork to then adopt a normal style clutch, which I believe is a pull type clutch, but don't quote me on that. So the clutch I've opted for is a Nismo Coppermix organic style clutch, which I paid $2,800 for. Now, it's a pretty penny, but people swear by these in the drift scene, in the track scene, and just general street driving because it's an organic style twin disc, which means it's going to be more delicate on the transmission and more delicate on your left leg. It not only will hold the power well, but it will also drive great, and it won't be a rattly piece of crap that twin discs are known for. Now, unfortunately, when you do decide to put a Skyline transmission in one of these, it won't directly bolt up to the SR20. So you'll need either a cut and shut job, or what I've opted for is a Alpha Omega Engineering adapter plate kit. So the beauty of the Alpha Engineering adapter plate kit is that it's basically what the name suggests. It's engineered for this platform. Alpha have gone to extreme lengths to ensure that the gearbox fits in this car like a standard Aisin 6-speed or 5-speed from an S14, for instance. So, of course, quality and comfort comes at a price, and the adapter kit by itself is, I think, around $3,500 to $4,000. So, you have your clutch, you have your transmission, but you're left with a cylindrical hole under your car. And how do you fix that? Well, you put a tail shaft. Now, once again, it's an S chassis. It's going to give you problems. And we've run into another problem here. The standard S chassis tail shaft won't bolt onto the Skyline transmission. So what some people do is they retain the Skyline half shaft from the transmission, and then they bolt on a Silvia 200SX tail shaft, or modify the Skyline shaft to mate up with the R200 diff in the back. I believe that's how they do it. Don't quote me on that because that's not what I've done. I've gone for the easy approach, and I've gone for the Alpha Omega single piece aluminium tail shaft. Now that baby is going to run back around $1,000. So in short, if you want to hold 400 plus kilowatts in an S chassis, you need around about $20,000. Now you might notice that I said hold. $20,000 won't make you 400 kilowatts because there are a few things I've left out, such as turbo, ECU, and other fabrication that you might need, which is generally specific to each car. My roundabout estimate to make 400 to 450 kilowatts in an S chassis with an SR20 and a Alpha Omega kit and Skyline transmission is approximately $30,000 to $35,000. Now you might be thinking, Nathan, that's ridiculous. There's no way $30,000 to $35,000. You've heard it here, friends. I've already spent $20,000 just to hold the power that I'm going to make in the future. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's really expensive to make power in an S chassis, which is why a lot of people will take the SR20, will take that Aisin 6-speed out of this car and throw in a JZ or an RB or even a Barra. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I've tried to be as transparent, as informative as possible when talking about trying to make power in an S chassis. I wouldn't lie to you guys, I've literally spent this money on this car already. I'd love to hear any feedback you guys have about any of my videos, and I'd love to hear future video ideas that you guys want to see me make. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.